Hey guys, it's Justin from the Nintendo Dads podcast. Man, I am pumped for this interview, and I hope that you are as well. This is a really cool opportunity. We got to connect with Gary from DrinkBox Studios. And DrinkBox Studios, you've probably heard them before. They're really well known for this incredible game called Guacamelee, which you can find on the Wii U currently. But this September, that's right, September of 2016, they are releasing a brand new game called Severed, and that is actually part of the Nindies Summer Jam for the month of September. So Severed is coming out the week of September 22nd. It is a cross-buy game. Guys, this game looks incredible. I was really excited going into the interview about it. Seeing trailers, seeing some game footage, I was super pumped. And then the more I talked to Gary about it, the more and more I got excited about it. And I cannot wait to get my hands on this incredible game. Hopefully you guys do too. So enjoy this interview with Gary from DrinkBox Studios talking about Severed. Gary, thanks very much for joining us and coming in and spending some time talking about Severed. This looks like a really, really cool game coming out quite soon on the Nintendo platforms. Can you tell me a little bit about the game, kind of the I guess the story synopsis, so to say?
Yeah, well, the story is actually kind of open to interpretation for a lot of people. There's a bit of ambiguity there. Even internally in the studio, folks are interpreting the story a little bit different here and there. But basically, you play the role of Sasha, who is involved in some sort of an incident. She has one arm, and she finds herself in a very strange, fairly dark place, and she's on a quest to find her family, and with the help of some strange characters in this world.
Sure. Okay. Excellent. So, when you what kind of inspire? Now, obviously, DrinkBox Studios, a lot of pedigree of fantastic games. I think Guacamelee obviously comes to my mind. What kind of inspired this game a little bit? Because this sounds a little bit different than maybe Blob and Guacamelee. Where did that come from?
Yeah, it's definitely different in a few different facets, I think. For starters, in terms of the gameplay, very different on that front. Typically, we're doing platformers here. This is definitely not a platformer. And the core gameplay idea came about with an internal game jam, actually. And somebody had this idea to do something cool that was sort of touch-based slashing type mechanics. And that concept of severing limbs and using those limbs to buy parts to upgrade your skills was part of that initial idea. So that's where that came from. And the story, I think, just sort of evolved over time. So it was really the initial catalyst was the core mechanic itself. And then choosing the platform was based on that core mechanic as opposed to platform first. It's like, well, here's the mechanic. What platform is this best suited for? Turned out more than one platform.
Sure, yeah.
And then it evolved from there.
Right. Yeah, that did strike me kind of as I was watching it that it is a very very different mechanic, obviously, than your typical platformer, right? And I was kind of wondering like where that came from. And so it's just what's a game jam exactly? It sounds like just a bunch of hanging out, talking about ideas, or
yeah, it's like hanging out, talking about ideas, and even prototyping some of those ideas just to see how they play out and how they feel. So it's just everybody kind of getting together and just spitballing all kinds of cool ideas just to see what comes out of it, things that you wouldn't normally approach, trying to get something from outside the box a little.
Right. Yeah, I like that. So when we look at Severed from afar, there is a very definitive art style to Severed. These very kind of bright colors, very sharp line designs, if you would. Very reminiscent of Guacamelee, of what we saw earlier. Can you talk a little bit of kind of like where that inspiration comes from? Because obviously being it feels, if you look at Guacamelee, luchador, Mexican, and you're a development studio that's downtown Toronto. So I can't imagine there's a lot of, Mexican culture that's influencing this. How did that come through?
There actually is a lot of Mexican culture.
Is there? Okay, so there's my ignorance of being out in the West.
So, Augusto is one of our core concept artists here, and he's lived here in Canada for 10 years, but he's originally from Mexico, and that's where a lot of those ideas came from. The Severed, on the other hand, is really quite unique as far as that goes. It's just out there. I mean, I don't know how his mind works exactly.
Sure.
He puts down these sketches, and it's just like, what is that? And he says, I don't know, but it looks pretty cool. Let's run with it. So that's where it kind of comes from. The art style is very similar to Guacamelee, which I think is really interesting in how it juxtaposes with the darker themes that are at play in this particular story. So you get a really kind of unique, I think, emotional impact from that art style, sort of similar color palettes, but with these darker themes at play. To me, it feels pretty cool. It's a lot of fun.
Nice. Kind of on that vein of Guacamelee or Guacamelee, as my daughter calls it, guacamole. She can't quite say the word right. It's quite cute. She's been trying to play it. Cool. Is this kind of in that universe, or is this like a separate part of that universe at all, or is this completely different?
This is different.
Okay. This is
it's definitely different.
Okay, absolutely. So, is there any part of the development cycle as you're getting ready to develop a game like this? Now, obviously, it came out originally on Vita. It's transitioned now to the iOS App Store, and it's coming out on the Nintendo platforms, which feels like it's a very easy transition from an appearance, right? You've got a stylus, you've got a touchpad. Those ideas seem to translate well. Is there challenges in kind of developing for these multiple platforms, and I guess maybe what are some of the challenges that maybe the Nintendo platform might provide to you, or is it just kind of a matter of porting, so to say?
Oh no, it's definitely not a matter of porting. So we treat each platform to play to its strengths, and each platform has different, I wouldn't say weaknesses, but differences that might work well on one platform but not on the other. So we actually spend a lot of extra time on the design side to make things just right. So you've got the Nintendo DS with the two screens that you're dealing with, the smaller screen size, there's a different aspect ratio to it. All of those things need to be addressed. So we're actually putting features in, mostly usability type features, to make sure that we cater properly to the platform. Just a straight port is obviously the first step. Let's just get it running. And then right away you can see all the things that are needed to support the platform for what it is. So again, the dual screens, what are you doing with them? What's extra information versus what looks cool? I'd say that 3DS is actually particularly challenging.
Really?
Well, yeah, because, it ports over and plays well right off the bat. But you want to take advantage of all the cool features. So you have a second screen. So what do you put on that second screen that's useful? What do you put on that second screen that's pretty? And do you support the 3D and so on and so forth? And our particular constraint, though, is that the core gameplay has to be on the touch screen. The accuracy of the swiping in this game, it's not blind swiping at all. You can't just slash away and expect to win the game. You really have to pay attention to what you're doing. So working around those constraints to make sure that we're using both screens in a useful kind of way, but also taking advantage of the top screen to look pretty when players want to, really pushed us into creating some extra features on that platform to really make it shine.
Nice. So, you're talking about some of those extra features. What were some of those extra features that kind of make that shine?
Well, I don't think we've announced what those features are.
Okay, sure, fair enough.
We're releasing very soon here, and we keep at it because we're still play testing. We're still making sure, has what we've tried actually worked? Do people like it? Do they enjoy it? What do they have to say about it? And we do this for all of our games throughout development. We're constantly bringing people in off the street, sitting down, playing, talking to them. And there isn't a thought that comes up that we don't address and say, okay, is this actually an issue? What can we do to address it? And trying to make it a good experience regardless of the type of player that's playing the game.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I like that. When you look at the game and you look at a game, the character like Sasha, for example, seen some scenes of her, looks very powerful, looks very strong. Was it being a female character at all consideration, or was it just like, this is, we're in 2016, I'm a father of two daughters. I love seeing a very empowered female character, right? And in the trailers I'm seeing here, she is kicking ass and taking names, pretty much, and I love that. So can we talk about, was that a conscious decision, or just like a character is a character no matter what nowadays?
So I'm a father of two girls as well.
Yeah.
Relate. I know where you're coming from, and I appreciate that about the game as well. But it really wasn't something that was consciously, let's make this protagonist a girl because it's Y and Z. It just seemed to fit right off the bat. Yeah. And interestingly, and this is what I really love about it, is Sasha is strong in more ways than just kicking ass and taking names.
Okay.
I'm not going to give any spoilers away, of course, but this game underlines that there's more to strength than just violence. There's a lot more to this than that.
Nice. There's definitely, when you also look at her from afar, there's a Mad Maxian kind of look to her at times, right? With the arm being gone, kind of the disheveled clothes that she's wearing, right? Looks very kind of stern. Was there any influences from that at all, or was that just kind of happenstance?
That just kind of, really, it's our concept artist again is just like, hey, this will look cool and this will look cool, and it really does. But there's something underlying there too, I think, in how she transforms through the game, and where she starts, where she peaks, and where she actually ends. There's definitely, I think, a sort of a mirror between what's happening inside her and what her external appearances are as well. So there's I think there's some deeper meaning there too.
Nice. And it looks like there's RPG-like essence to it too as well, like gearing up, grinding, putting different suits on or different layers to it as well, different paths. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of those kind of, I guess, I don't necessarily say upgrades, but processes there?
Sure, yeah. I mean, she has a lot of abilities, and she has skill trees associated with those abilities. And a big part of the core loop of the game is involved around defeating her enemies, severing their limbs, and she uses those limbs as her currency to buy upgrades for those skills to get better at severing more limbs, and so on and so forth. It was actually very challenging on the balance side of the game, because there's so many different currency types, and the different skills that you buy require different types of currency. So you really start to focus not just on what the parts you're getting, but how you're going to get those parts as well. During combat as well, you can't just brutally go and kill an enemy. You don't get the parts then. You've killed them too fast. You have to build up what we call your focus meter, and you have to build up your focus meter in order to be able to sever them. And then when you do sever them at that point as well, there's also skill involved in that. You have to sever off the limbs in a certain amount of time and then collect those. And then on top of that, you're looking at your skills and thinking to yourself, should I save more of these eyeballs, or should I get more of these hands for this ability? And you're sort of looking at the tree and seeing what kind of upgrades you want. Do I want to go defensively? Do I want to go offensively? Do I want to focus on physical damage? Do I want to focus on magic and controlling them versus killing them outright, and so on and so forth? So there's a lot of, I think, interesting decisions to make within battle that have an impact on the skills that then have an impact back in the battle again.
Right. Yeah. I like that. Like you said there, it feels like there's just layers upon layers of really, I think, precision and work that the player has to think of. Because I think when you look at it from afar, you could just think, oh, it's just swiping my stylus or just swiping my finger, and we're done here. But there seems to be such a layering and precision about what you have to do as a player to kind of enhance that. I really like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of depth to it on that front. There's a lot of decisions for the player to make, and those decisions have a big impact on how they progress through the game. And you'll see, and we see it again in the play test when people come in, they'll play in very different kinds of ways. So we were very careful to make sure that we played from those different perspectives, like a more defensive player, or a more magic-using player, or a more physical type player, to make sure that the game was balanced and fun for all those different types of players.
Right. Excellent. That's fantastic. Yeah, no, absolutely, right. Although I rather enjoy your statement of like eyeballs as currency. So I'm wondering maybe I shouldn't be giving this to the 5-year-old to be playing as eyeballs for currency.
Yeah, it definitely has some mature themes, and you got to think about, I mean, as a parent, I'm sure you play the games that your kids are going to play before they play.
Yep.
And that's really kind of the guiding force there, and then you make your own decision based on what you know about your child and what you know is best for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, they're loving Guacamelee right now. So I said, no, let's make this one a connection. Now this is going to be cross-buy, as I read from the press release for when Nintendo comes out. That's a pretty cool thing. Talk to me a little bit about maybe like, is that easy for you guys to ask for Nintendo, like, or is that a part of your negotiations, or how does that work exactly?
It was pretty much our decision to make, and it's a business decision on our end, and we know it's something that a lot of Nintendo fans really enjoy, really appreciate, and we just felt it was the right thing to do.
Nice, yeah, absolutely. I definitely appreciate as a fan that option to be able to say like, hey, I purchased it here, I purchased it there. Is there cloud? I'm gonna ask the question: is there cloud saving then based on that?
From my understanding, that's not easy for us to do, and that's more of a technical issue than anything else. It's something we've talked about and something that we'd like to do. Yeah. But I don't believe that's easy or maybe even not possible at this point in time.
Yeah. Probably not. So, after the release of this, which is going to be coming out relatively soon, where does your development team go now? Do you guys kind of take a bit of a rest? Do you start doing patchworks, DLC, or do you kind of start in like the next game in DrinkBox Studio's kind of house, or what's the next thing for you guys?
Probably a good chance we're starting on the next game.
Sure. Okay. Fair enough.
We're not done with Severed now. We're still working on that and the different platforms and making sure it's top notch before it gets out there. And we'll see. I don't know what's happening in terms of the Severed brand moving forward, but we certainly are moving forward.
Right. On a game like this, like Severed or Guacamelee, how long is a development cycle typically from like conception idea to published and out of the house and everyone's purchasing? What's that window kind of look like?
It can depend. On Severed, I would have to check with the guys to be perfectly frank with you, but I believe it was just over 2 years.
Wow.
It's typically 1.5 to 2 years, and I've been working on games for a long time, over 20 years, and it really can vary anywhere between 6 months to 3-4 years or whatever, but typically a couple of years to put something together. And I think Severed took a little longer than expected. Simply because of how new it was for the studio here, and really the mechanics in general collectively are pretty fresh and pretty unique. So there was a lot of breaking ground there and trying new things. And as we started to test and see things, there was a lot to react to, a lot of adjustments to make to make sure it was a solid experience.
Right, absolutely. As we're kind of wrapping up a little bit of this interview here, just one of the questions I kind of have is, as a game developer, DrinkBox Studios, downtown Toronto, Canadian, there's a lot more indie development teams kind of going on, or at least the indie scene seems to be increasing. 13 AM Games is a great example, Image and Forum. Is there a community like that supports you guys? Do you support each other? How does that work? And I guess a lot of people are probably, a long time ago, it never felt like you could get into video game development, right? It felt like an aspiration that was pretty difficult to get into. But now more of these studios are popping up and doing great, amazing content. Can you talk to me a little bit about like what that's like as a developer and kind of your story as a developer?
Sure. I mean, it's changed a lot over the years, that's for sure. And I think a big part of that is the tools at everyone's disposal. It's much easier to start developing games than it ever has been before, with a lot of engines that are out there that are very, very affordable or free, where people can start to just test out all their crazy ideas right off the bat. There's a lot of useful resources online in terms of forums and community forums and so on and so forth for people to support each other. And here in Toronto, I know there's definitely a tight-knit group of indie developers that get together regularly on a social basis and help each other out wherever they can help each other out. So there's definitely a strong sense of community within the indie development scene, and even beyond the indie development scene. I have plenty of friends at the bigger studios as well that I talk to quite regularly. We all love making games, right? And that's so we have a lot in common.
Nice, excellent. Yeah, it's very exciting as a consumer to kind of sit back and watch amazing development companies like DrinkBox Studios create really compelling, engaging games, and then for them to be quite successful. And I think that's always kind of nice to watch, because I think we're always rooting for indies and making, and I think in a lot of cases they're sometimes making much better content than the AAA studios are, that I think feel more genuine and feel like they have more heart in them. So yeah, congratulations to you guys and success you've had.
Thank you, and thank you for saying so. Yeah, I think one of the things, because I've worked on both sides of the fences,
sure.
And one thing I can say here is there tends to be a lot more creative freedom, because there's a lot less opinions from a lot less people, and the opinions are all people that are directly involved in making the game, as opposed to maybe having indirect involvement in the game, maybe on the finance side or the business side, and so on and so forth. So it's quite liberating. It's nice.
Good, excellent. Great, right on. So Gary, just as we're wrapping it up, I want to direct everyone, if you haven't already, to pick up Severed when it comes out. It's available on the PlayStation Store for Vita. You can check it out there. It's on the iOS Store, and of course coming to Nintendo 3DS and Wii U very soon. Gary, thanks so much for joining us and talking to us about Severed.
Oh, terrific! Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, guys, as a reminder, Severed hits the Nintendo eShop the week of September 22nd. That's a Thursday, so go grab your red marker, mark up your calendar, make sure you know when that game is coming out, because I can guarantee this is one you're going to want to add to your collection. Big thanks to Gary, and of course, big thanks to DrinkBox Studios for allowing us the opportunity to connect with them about this incredible game. Guys, thanks very much for listening to Nintendo Dads and subscribing to everything that we do. Thanks very much.